She was just a mechanic's daughter until she fixed the impossible engine that shocked a billionaire CEO. What happened next changed everything. Please, before you watch this video, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Bless your soul as you do. In the humid heart of Jackson, Mississippi, sat a weather-beaten auto shop named River South Auto Works. It wasn't flashy or state-of-the-art, but it was where Jayla Bennett felt alive. She'd grown up there, watching her father, Thomas Bennett, work magic on broken-down trucks, school buses, and even the occasional speedboat engine. While most girls her age played with dolls or scrolled through TikTok, Jayla spent her weekends elbows deep in carburetors and gearboxes. Thomas was a legend in the local mechanic world. People said if Thomas couldn't fix it, it wasn't fixable. He didn't have a fancy degree, but what he did have was raw skill, and he passed every bit of it to Jayla. By the time she was 17, she could rebuild a transmission in her sleep. But Jayla didn't just want to stay in Jackson her whole life. She dreamed bigger: racing engines, high-performance builds, even aerospace tech. When she landed a summer internship at MechTech Industries, the top engineering firm in the region, it felt like her dream was finally within reach. The company had glossy labs, sleek machinery, and a staff full of sharp-dressed engineers with Ivy League degrees. It was a whole different world from the dusty little shop she came from. Jayla kept her head down those first few weeks, working hard, staying late, and always asking questions. But no matter how eager she was, most of the engineers barely acknowledged her. Some assumed she was just there to meet a quota. One even joked that she probably got the internship because she knew how to hold a wrench. Her supervisor, Dennis Carter, was the worst of them. Slick back hair, expensive shoes, and a chip on his shoulder. He didn't like Jayla's quiet confidence, and he definitely didn't like that she seemed to understand things faster than the other interns. Then came the day everything changed. A mysterious prototype engine had been delivered to the shop. Top secret, cutting edge, and completely stalled. The client was furious. 5 engineers had already failed to get it running. Management was in panic mode. That's when Dennis saw his opportunity. During a staff meeting, he clapped his hands loudly. "All right, folk," he said, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Jayla. "Since everyone else has failed, why don't we let our prodigy intern take a crack at it?" A few of the engineers chuckled. Jayla stood still, her face unreadable. Dennis smirked. "What do you say, Bennett? Want to impress us with your magic touch?" Jayla nodded. "Sure, I'll need 2 hours." Laughter echoed through the room. Dennis leaned against the wall, clearly entertained. "You've got until lunch." Jayla walked to the engine, her hands steady, her mind already working 10 steps ahead. She didn't need to be liked. She just needed to be heard. Through the roar of an engine only she could fix. This wasn't just a test, it was a turning point, and she was ready. The engine loomed like a beast in the middle of the garage. Most of the crew had already turned back to their stations, whispering and snickering behind their laptops. But a few stayed to watch, arms folded, eyes skeptical. Jayla could feel their judgment hang in the air like the smell of oil. She tied her braids back, pulled on her gloves, and opened the prototype casing. The engine was a custom-built V8 hybrid with a dual-core ignition system, complicated, expensive, and rumored to be designed for international racing teams. Jayla wasn't intimidated, she was intrigued. As she carefully studied the layout, she realized something odd. The design didn't follow traditional sequencing. Some wires were routed inefficiently, and the microcontroller's response time was off in the original specs she'd reviewed the night before. While the rest of the engineers were focused on mechanical issues, Jayla suspected something deeper: firmware trouble. She pulled her beat-up laptop from her backpack, ignoring the raised eyebrows around her. "She's gonna code it to death?" One guy mumbled under his breath. Another whispered, "Give it 5 minutes. That thing's gonna explode." Jayla didn't flinch. She connected a diagnostic interface and began probing the system. The firmware was riddled with outdated commands, likely leftover test code from development. It was causing the ignition sequence to misfire and stall out just seconds after startup. "Found you," she whispered to herself, a small smile forming. From across the room, Dennis watched silently, arms crossed. He hadn't expected her to actually open the diagnostics. He figured she'd poke around for show and quit. But now she was running live patches, rewriting the microcontroller logic line by line. Jayla's hands flew across the keyboard as she cleaned up the timing protocols, optimized the command delay, and recalibrated the synchronization. Finally, she uploaded the patch and backed away from the console. With one steady hand, she pressed the ignition. Click, click, vroom! The engine roared to life, purring like a panther. Everyone in the garage froze. The same impossible engine that had humbled 5 seasoned engineers now hummed perfectly under Jayla's watch. Dennis stepped forward, stunned. How did you do that? Jayla looked him straight in the eye. The issue wasn't mechanical, it was a software conflict. Timing protocols were overlapping, which stalled the system. I rewrote it. He blinked, speechless. She pulled off her gloves and slung her backpack over one shoulder. You wanted a miracle, she said coolly. That was one. I'll be back after lunch. With that, she walked out, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces. Somewhere in the back, a junior engineer muttered, "She's not just good. She's better than all of us." And Dennis, for once, had nothing smart to say. Jayla Bennett had just shattered every assumption in that room, and she was only getting started. By the time Jayla returned from lunch, her name was echoing through the halls of MechTech Industries. Some interns greeted her with wide eyes and awkward smiles. Others whispered in corners, trying to make sense of what had happened that morning. One of the engineers, a guy named Carlos Rivera, approached her near the vending machines. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "That engine fix, that was impressive, like really impressive." Jayla gave him a polite nod. "Thanks." Carlos hesitated, then leaned in. "You ever think about full-time here after the internship? I mean, you clearly have something most of us don't." Jayla raised an eyebrow. "You mean common sense?" Carlos laughed, shaking his head. "No, I mean guts and instincts. That's rare around here." Jayla didn't respond right away. She knew how companies like MechTech worked. They loved to parade diversity when it suited them, but when it came to real leadership or technical influence, they clung to the same old circles. She'd seen it in how they treated her father too, called him gifted, but never offered him anything beyond fixing things for their convenience. She wasn't interested in being anyone's token. Later that afternoon, she was summoned to the director's office. Erica Vaughn, the company's head of engineering, sat behind a glass desk. Her gray suit was sharp, her demeanor sharper. She gestured for Jayla to sit. "I've heard about your little miracle," Erica said, crossing her arms. "Dennis said you fixed the prototype engine in under 2 hours." Jayla kept her posture relaxed. "Yes, ma'am." Erica tilted her head. "Do you know what that engine was meant for?" Jayla nodded. "Street legal race hybrid. Modular tech. Looks like someone tried to rush the firmware layer and skipped integration testing." Erica blinked. "You figured that out without access to the restricted data files?" "I don't need access to bad decisions," Jayla said calmly. "Just the outcome they create." For a long moment, there was silence. Then Erica smiled, thin and calculated. "I like you," she said. "You're sharp, but you'll find that this industry doesn't always reward talent. It rewards presentation. Play your cards right, and maybe one day you'll be where I'm sitting." Jayla met her gaze. "I'm not interested in playing. I'm interested in changing the game." Erica's smile faded slightly. "We'll see." As Jayla left the office, she knew 2 things for sure. 1, she'd made a powerful impression, and 2, she'd just made a powerful enemy. Back in the garage, Dennis paced nervously. His ego was bruised, and he didn't like feeling irrelevant in front of someone half his age. Jayla had embarrassed him, publicly. And the worst part, she hadn't even tried to. Now he was determined to remind her that no matter how skilled she was, she didn't belong. Not in his world, not in his company, not yet. And as Jayla got back to work, tightening a bolt on a different project, she felt that electric hum of tension rising all around her. Dennis Carter was never one to let things slide, especially not being shown up by a teenage intern with grease on her jeans and a mind sharper than any tool in his belt. The fact that Jayla Bennett had succeeded where he had failed, it ate at him like rust on chrome. That afternoon, he sat at his workstation, face tight, scrolling through Jayla's diagnostic logs from the engine fix. He needed something, anything that could be used against her. Then he saw it. She'd used an external diagnostic tool, her own laptop. Company policy technically required employees to use only MechTech authorized devices when interfacing with proprietary systems. Dennis smiled coldly. Gotcha. He took a screenshot of the access logs, then stormed into Erica Vaughn's office with a printed report in hand. She broke protocol, he said, slamming the papers on her desk. This could have compromised confidential tech. Erica skimmed the document, her expression unreadable. She fixed a system none of your engineers could figure out. She still broke policy. That's grounds for dismissal. Imagine if the client finds out. I'll handle it, Erica cut him off. You're dismissed. Back on the floor, Jayla worked on a complex wiring diagram, headphones in, focused and unfazed. But when she looked up, she noticed the glances, the hushed voices. Word was spreading. Carlos came over and sat beside her. You good? Yeah, Jayla said, though she wasn't sure why her stomach had suddenly knotted. A moment later, Erica approached, clipboard in hand. Jayla, a word? They walked into a small glass conference room. Erica shut the door and sat across from her. You used your own laptop to patch that engine, she said flatly. Yes, I wasn't given a company-issued interface. You were supposed to request one. Jayla raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware fixing a crisis counted as misconduct. Erica sighed. I'm not here to argue. I'm giving you a formal warning. One more infraction, and your internship is over. Jayla stared at her, then nodded slowly. Understood. As she left the room, Dennis leaned on the doorframe outside, pretending to check his watch. Tough day? He asked smugly. Jayla didn't stop walking. Careful, she said without looking at him. You keep chasing me, and you might end up learning something. That night, Jayla stayed late. Alone in the garage, she pulled up the next engine project, a concept design that hadn't even been assigned yet. She studied the schematic like a puzzle, her fingers moving across the blueprints as if guided by instinct. If they wanted to play dirty, fine. But she wasn't backing down. She'd work twice as hard, learn twice as fast, and if necessary, she'd build her own space at the table, wrench in one hand and a plan in the other. Because Jayla knew something Dennis didn't. Talent gets you noticed. But grit makes you unforgettable. The morning after the warning, Jayla arrived early, before most of the team had even clocked in. She needed the quiet. She needed the machines humming without voices judging her every move. She was elbows deep in a new prototype when Carlos rushed in, face pale. Jayla, it's the demo engine. It's not working. It's supposed to run for the board meeting in 30 minutes. Jayla whipped off her gloves. What happened? They tried installing Dennis's patch last night. It stalled, then the engine started overheating. We think it might blow. She bolted toward the test chamber. Inside, two senior engineers hovered nervously over a flickering console. The prototype, the same model she'd studied last night, was vibrating violently. A burning smell filled the air. Shut it down, one of the engineers barked. We can't. The override's not responding. Jayla squeezed between them, scanned the interface, and her jaw clenched. The software Dennis had uploaded had forced a hard loop in the power distribution module. It was stuck, feeding current into itself, like a snake eating its tail. She dropped to the floor and ripped open the emergency panel. Where's your boss? She snapped. Dennis left 20 minutes ago for breakfast. Of course he did. Jayla grabbed a fuse extractor, reached deep into the main circuit array, and yanked the primary power cell just as the temperature gauge spiked red. The engine died with a sputtering groan. Silence. Everyone exhaled. The head engineer looked at her with disbelief. You just saved the lab. That thing was about to combust. Jayla stood up, brushing soot from her sleeves. Someone rewrote the safety loop backwards. Who installed the new patch? One of the interns looked sheepish. Dennis gave it to us late last night. Said it was ready. Jayla didn't say anything. She didn't need to. By the time Dennis returned, the boardroom was packed. Executives, partners, and even the company's founder, Mr. Walter Langston, had flown in from New York. Everyone had been expecting a powerful demo to show off MechTech's innovation. Instead, they got emergency alarms and fire suppression foam. Erica Vaughn stood at the head of the room, barely holding together her professional smile. When Dennis stepped in, she pulled him aside. "What happened?" she whispered sharply. Dennis fumbled. It must have been a minor error in the patch I submitted." "Minor?" Erica snapped. "That engine almost ignited in front of a $10 million client." Just then, the doors opened and in walked Jayla, grease still on her hands. "I can explain exactly what happened," she said calmly, her voice clear. "And I've already rewritten the patch. I can get the demo running in 5 minutes." Erica hesitated, then looked at Walter Langston, who gave a small nod. "Do it." Jayla stepped up to the console with every eye in the room on her. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't flinch. 5 minutes later, the engine came to life, smooth, powerful, flawless. Jayla stepped back, and for the first time since she arrived, the entire room applauded. Even Erica looked stunned. But no one looked more shocked than Dennis, because in trying to humiliate her, he'd only made her a hero. The applause had barely faded when Mr. Walter Langston stood up, his eyes fixed on Jayla with quiet intensity. He was a legend in the tech world, part engineer, part visionary, and everyone at MechTech knew he rarely spoke unless it truly mattered. "Miss Bennett," he said, voice steady, "would you join me for a quick walk?" Jayla blinked. "Yes, sir." They stepped out of the boardroom and into the side hallway, away from the others. Jayla kept pace, still coming down from the adrenaline rush. Langston glanced at her. "How long have you been interning here?" 3 weeks, she replied, "and yet you fixed a prototype engine my lead engineers couldn't figure out, then prevented a lab explosion, and salvaged a demo for our most important investors? All before noon." Jayla shrugged. "Wasn't in the job description, but someone had to." Langston chuckled. "Your father, he's Charles Bennett, isn't he? Used to work contract jobs for us back in the early 2000s. "Yes, he's the one who taught me everything." Langston nodded. "I remember him, brilliant with machines, but back then, people like him, they didn't always get the credit they deserved." Jayla's expression softened, but she didn't respond. She didn't have to. They stopped at a large window overlooking the shop floor below. Langston turned to her. "Jayla, I'll be direct. What do you want?" "Long term." She hesitated. No one had ever asked her that in a serious way. Not like this. "I want to design things that matter," she said. "Engines, systems, stuff that changes the game. But I also want to break the mold. People like me, we're not usually the ones leading the room. I want that to change." Langston nodded slowly. "Then let's make it happen." Her eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" "I'm offering you a full-time position, not another internship. A seat at the table in our prototype division. You'll work under me directly for 6 months, fast-track training. After that, you'll decide your future." Jayla's mouth went dry. It was everything she had dreamed of, and more. Thank you, Mr. Langston. I accept." Back in the boardroom, the tension had shifted. Erica Vaughn was now fully aware she'd underestimated Jayla. "And Dennis?" He sulked in the back, pretending to scroll through his phone, praying no one asked for his version of events. When Jayla returned, Erica approached her stiffly. "Congratulations. I hear you're moving up." "Seems like it," Jayla said with a calm smile. Erica leaned in. "Be careful. This industry doesn't forgive mistakes." Jayla's eyes didn't flinch. "Neither do I." Later that evening, Jayla called her father. "Dad, you're not going to believe what happened today." Charles laughed through the phone. "Knowing you, you fixed something impossible and scared a few people in suits." She smiled. "Pretty much." But deep down she knew. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. 3 months later, the old repair garage on the corner of Sycamore Street buzzed with more noise than usual. The Bennett's family shop, where Jayla had learned everything she knew, was cleaner now, with new lights, fresh paint, and a brand new sign that read, "Bennett and Company Engineering Solutions." Charles wiped his hands on a rag as Jayla backed into the lot in a sleek electric truck. She stepped out in a MechTech jacket with her name embroidered in silver. Jayla Bennett, Prototype Division. "Still know how to park?" Charles teased. "Barely," she laughed, hugging him tight. Since joining the prototype team under Walter Langston, Jayla had already co-designed 2 new high-efficiency motors, one of which was set to launch in the next-gen eco-fleet line. But success hadn't changed her. She still came back every Saturday to help her dad tune up old engines and guide local kids who hung around the shop hoping to learn. Inside, she noticed a group of teens, mostly girls, crowding around a workbench where her old tablet and sketches sat beside a disassembled carburetor. Jayla clapped her hands. "All right, crew, who wants to learn how not to burn out a fuel pump?" The room filled with laughter, then eager hands shot up. As they worked, her phone buzzed. A message from Erica Vaughn. "Jayla, the board wants to meet next week about your project pitch. Walter says they're seriously considering your mentorship program idea. Congrats." She smiled. The idea had come to her after remembering how many kids she'd seen over the years who reminded her of herself. Kids with big ideas and no one taking them seriously. She wanted to create a pipeline, from the streets to the labs. Real opportunities, real change. "Big news?" Charles asked as she tucked the phone away. "Could be. Might be launching a mentorship program soon. All those girls who get told they don't belong in tech? I'm going to prove otherwise." He nodded with pride. "You already have." Just then, a familiar engine roar pulled into the lot. It was Carlos, grinning behind the wheel of a rebuilt dragster they'd been working on during off hours. "Yo, Jayla!" he shouted. "You coming to test this beast or what?" Jayla wiped her hands and tossed her gloves into the bin. "Let's see if your wiring holds up." As she hopped into the passenger seat, Charles watched from the garage, pride welling in his chest. Once upon a time, they'd called her just a mechanic's daughter. But now, she was a rising force in the most elite engineering firm in the country. She hadn't just earned a seat at the table. She was building a whole new one. And for every kid who'd ever been doubted, dismissed, or overlooked, Jayla Bennett was proof that brilliance doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it shows up with oil-stained jeans and rewrites the future. Jayla Bennett proved that talent knows no boundaries, not gender, not background, and certainly not where you come from. From the daughter of a small-town mechanic to the hero of a billion-dollar engineering firm, her journey is a reminder that brilliance shines brightest under pressure. If this inspired you, don't forget to click the like button, leave a comment, and share this video with someone who needs a little motivation today. And if you love stories like this, hit that subscribe button and join us for more incredible true life tales.